Please also make sure to throw away any garbage that is left over from lunch. Thank you. There are bins located around the room near the panel. Again, if we could have all folks return to the vault right now. Our panel is starting in about 3 minutes. Again, 3 minutes until the next panel. Thank you very much. Again, asking for folks to return to the vault, please, for the commencement of our next panel. We'll start in about 3 minutes. Thank you. And if we could return to the vault, we are starting the next panel in 2 minutes. Thank you. Again, return to the vault. We are starting the panel in 2 minutes. Thanks. Again, please join us back here in the vault. Thank you.
We'll be getting started in just a few minutes here. Thanks for your patience. I hope everyone enjoyed lunch. We're going to get started here. So the NFL, MLB, and NBA are imminent examples of high-quality sports leagues. They've been a part of the fabric of North American culture for longer than many of us have been alive. But the question remains, what has made their product so successful? Together, we'll look to answer this question and understand not only the triumphs, but the consistent challenges of running among the biggest sports organizations in the world. We'll also consider the advent of new technologies in broadcasting, changes in fan expectations of on-field product and game day experience, the role of local franchises within the larger operation, and perhaps the most important piece of all, what the future holds for each of these aspects. Our panelists: Troy Vincent, Executive Vice President of Football Operations at the NFL, Chris Petersen, Senior Vice President of Team Marketing and Business Operations at the NBA, and Mark Plutzer, Senior Vice President of Ticketing at the MLB. All are among the most uniquely qualified individuals to speak on this complex topic. We are looking forward to a very enlightening discussion. Please join me in welcoming them, along with our moderator, UW PhD candidate Estevan Molina, to the stage.
All right. Thanks, Jackson, for that warm welcome. Good afternoon, everybody. In my years of teaching, I was a high school teacher before this. The post-lunch period was usually big time hit or miss. Everybody was either relaxed, they got to spend time with friends and all that, or they're super tired and ready to just get out of here. So let's make it the latter one, so relaxed, fun. I want to thank you gentlemen here for joining me, and to kind of start, if you don't mind, sort of just introducing yourselves, what your role is with your leagues, and then we can kind of go from there.
Hey, so my name is Mark Plutzer. I'm the Senior Vice President of Ticketing for Major League Baseball. So my role oversees the day-to-day operations with baseball and all of our clients, in terms of ticket sales, ticket operations, and fan acquisition and fan growth strategies. So we oversee the relationships with each of the 30 baseball teams and the 120 minor league baseball teams. And in addition to that, we own Tickets.com, which is a white label ticketing solution that most of our baseball teams utilize. And then I also oversee all the operational staff for about the other 110 clients that we have that are not baseball related.
Chris Petersen, team marketing and business operations at the NBA, UW alum, and just really grateful to be here. Let me get that out of the way. I think everybody has said the same thing. Jackson, Devin, the entire crew who's organized, thank you so much for the opportunity. Teambo, as we call it, is an in-house consulting arm at the NBA that supports everything that happens off the floor, focused at the team level. And so everything from ticketing to marketing and content creation to partnerships to HR strategies, finance, strategic planning, all of that for our 30 teams, we support that. And the whole point of it is, in a revenue sharing environment in particular, a rising tide lifts all ships, and what's done effectively in Portland should be copied in Miami to the benefit of the entire league. And so I come from a management consulting background similar to Jordan Solomon. And when I heard that there was an in-house consulting arm at the NBA that got to work with all 30 of our teams and think about all these strategic parts of the business, I couldn't believe my good fortune. And so that's a little bit about what we do, but I know we'll get into more of that as we go.
Troy Vincent, UW alum. I'm now in my 15th season with the National Football League. I have the opportunity to work in four primary areas. One, player operations. That's anything that deals with the player off the field, past, present, or future. Second, officiating, as we would say, the common enemy, number one. So anything that deals with officiating on the field, the 125 on-field officials, replay assist, and then the pipeline development in that particular area. Game operations. Anything that deals with the game, you go into the stadium, from sideline technology, the coaches, teams coming out of the locker room, trying to keep everyone, the equity side of the sport, and making sure that everyone's playing by the same rules. I'm typically an auditor during the week, making sure that everything is in place so that the game, the live entertainment, can be played. And then the fourth is, we call it football business strategy. Anything that deals with the future of the game. The competitive aspects as we introduce technology, as we would say, keeping the art and the science, the proper integration of both, the art of coaching and the science of technology, that proper integration. How does the future game look? The future player, who's playing it, why they're playing it, and then how do we, reach the broad audience?
All right. Thank you. Before we dive into some questions, I want to make sure that we leave some time at the end for Q&As from you all. So at 1:45, if anybody has their phones out and is just keeping track of time, whoever has the first question, just raise their hand, and we'll kind of go exactly from there, get the audience involved a little bit. So, all right. So I wanted to touch on, Chris, something you said about the sort of consulting arm within the NBA. Given that the leagues are in a sort of unique business model where you have organizations underneath you that are competing against each other in a lot of different ways, how do you work with each team to make sure that they are all growing, but also sort of recognizing that they are competing with each other?
Yeah, and I think, because our teams are inherently local businesses, we have things called marketing territories, right? So teams can do specific things within 150 miles of their arena, and they can't do a lot of things outside of that. So inherently, there's an opportunity to create some exclusivity around what they do from a business standpoint. And so, again, that idea of best practice sharing, selling a local partnership or sponsorship in Portland, if they do it right, if they think about it in a really creative way or do something really unique, Miami can copy that. And the cool part about our job is that we get to be in all 30 of our NBA team markets. We get to talk to them about some of their strategies and focusing, whether that's on ticket pricing or unique ticket products or partnerships or creating a cool piece of content. And we get to take that back, filter it, and share it with other teams so that they can improve their local businesses as well. And a lot of times our teams aren't necessarily competing for the same customer. In certain cases, maybe, right? Like if you think about a global brand that, might have only a limited amount of partnerships dollars. But in general, they're competing, with other teams in the market, right? So a baseball team, unfortunately, an NFL team, which is brutal, candidly, in a good way. But also, a lot of those best practices can be lifted and shifted. And so, that's the interesting part about the job. And I think one of the cool parts about Teambo is that, David Stern put this in place back around 2000, and he has drilled it into our owners such that they have started to believe in the benefit of a centralized consulting arm like this. And so we have the trust of our teams, and so therefore the ability to influence and help shape behavior. And we're always thinking about, adding value. That's the number one kind of mantra that we live by, and thinking about that without being too competitive with your neighbor is a part of the equation.
And we have a very similar model where we can share on the football side. They compete like no other. But there's often times where we can share, here are best practices, here's what we've seen done in this particular market, an example on the player side. And we kind of deem them small market, medium market, you just say mega markets. But the sharing of best practices allows the Green Bays to take maybe some things that have happened in New York or Atlanta and put them to practice or customize them. And so we play a role inside of football ops on the sharing of best practices as it pertains to either international play here, domestically, on multiple topics that touch the clubs.
And we're actually not too dissimilar. And we probably have a little bit more of common markets because, we have the New Yorks, we have Chicago's, we have the LA's. We have a couple markets that have multiple teams in them. And even they share best practice amongst each other because the reality is, they're each competing for the heart and mind and the fandom of that customer. But once kind of someone makes that natural selection of the team that you really kind of gravitate towards, they're not then fighting for them coming to either a Cubs game or a White Sox game. You've kind of already made your choice. And now the Cubs and the White Sox both can kind of work with each other to get as many people to go to both the games because the reality is it helps more people in that market kind of even having that love-hate relationship, that everyone has when you have a like-minded market. And again, the more we can continue to share with our teams, and the reality is we actually also try to work with local other entities. We compete with each other for the fandom. Like you'll see a New York market, but the Yankees and MSG, the Knicks specifically, I mean, they're talking all the time, and they're trying to replicate each other's business models. If it's working, we want to find ways to continue to succeed and get more people to come to all of our games again, to continue to build out that lifelong fandom, and that that increased conversion. Make sure you keep coming back.
Mark, I'm glad you brought up a little bit of that sort of working with folks from other leagues, and Chris, a little bit of the competition with the NFL. But I was curious, given that you all sort of support the organizations under your leagues, how do you sort of learn from or take some ideas from other leagues that are trying to vie for some of the same customers that you all are?
Well, I'll jump in just real quick, because we'll give the NBA a little bit of credit. Like, Tebow is a snazzier name than anything we have right now, but what I do for my club services department. But, we really copy a lot of their approaches. So it's just understanding what they're doing and how they're doing. And again, if it's working, we want to be able to provide that service. So we want to continue to have all of our teams and all of our partners work together. And then the reality is, either a ticketing system will have commonality between partners, or maybe a corporate partner will have commonality between teams, and you end up with that dynamic sharing anyway. So there's two ways to do it. Either somebody else ends up having that seat at the table of driving that conversation amongst teams, or we do as a league. And if given that we want to participate with our teams and continue to drive success, it's probably inherently better for us to be able to provide that service to our teams than again another third party doing it on our behalf.
Yeah, and I mean, I think the best practice sharing and the attention that we all pay to one another definitely pays dividends. I think of examples like, we now have a centralized data infrastructure at the NBA, whereby the NBA collects and understands fan data and then shares it back with our teams, and vice versa, so that we can create better products for fans that they actually want to consume. And that was something that we took a cue from baseball on. When it comes to how fans watch games and watching condensed games and things like that without, any of the commentary, like the evolution of our League Pass product within our NBA app has a lot of those features. And, we definitely have incredibly smart people, but, sports and media content consumption is such a petri dish for innovation. And, you guys do a fantastic job at it, and you guys have been in that game for a long time. And so we learn from our peers as well on that dimension.
I'm a lifetime learner. So I am constantly studying what the other sports leagues are doing. Why? I want everyone to, if it's working, and sometimes I come back to my colleagues, they look at me like I'm crazy, like, why are you talking about the NBA or Major League Baseball? Because they're doing something right. They're doing it. It's not about we're all trying to get the same fans. No, we want young kids playing. We want parents to be happy. We want families to be happy about a good game experience. Whether it's Major League Baseball, NBA, or football, we all want the same thing. So I'm actually studying now the NBA's model of their international academies. As we look at expanding our global footprint, the NBA has done a wonderful job for decades of introducing their sport across the globe. So I'm studying that. My staff is studying some of those practices of how do you introduce Major League Baseball? How do you introduce your sport to the 3-year-old or the 5-year-old? Someone doesn't speak English, doesn't know what the ball looks like, or what the game, the rules, or things that are associated. So I'm studying all the time, bringing them back to our organization.
I think that's a great life lesson in general. It's just being able to learn from those who you may perceive as competitors will just better everybody. Troy, I'm super glad that you brought up the global game, which is something that me particularly that we're studying right now in the athletic department with international student athletes. I was hoping each of you could touch on a little bit of how your leagues are looking to expand, whether that's into new markets globally or getting talent from other places in the world. So, yeah. Go ahead, Troy.
Go ahead.
Well, I'll start it, which is sometimes it's fascinating. I'm like, okay, where are we going to play? Okay, is that stadium equipped? Is that area equipped? And now we're playing, 7 games internationally this year. Last year it was 5. And you think about who's in the market and how do you get people to, one, when I first started going to London, it's like, okay, there's not a home or away team here. There's like this stadium is full of people with all kind of jerseys. And then as they become more accustomed, it became like an entertainment event. But as you spend more time there, you educate the local markets on what your sport is. You bring your star. Again, the NBA has done this for really good for a long, long time. And as we look at the international, that footprint, who's playing, and now we have a introduction in flag. You have NFL Europe was a good tackle model. So there's some countries that are used to American football. We're a challenger sport for in most cases across the globe. We use the term challenger sport. Okay, how do you get into that household to get the kid just to pick up the ball, to introduce whether it's a young lady or a young man to pick up the ball and play.
Yeah, and I just piggyback on that. We have really a three-pronged strategy when it comes to growing the game globally. One is basketballs in hands, right? Through programs like the Junior NBA and Basketball Without Borders and things like that. The number one played team sport in the U.S. and number two globally. And so that's always going to be at the core of it, right? Participation leads to fandom. We want to incentivize that every chance we get. Number two is playing overseas. I mean, you guys have leaned into that as well. We played over 220 games in foreign markets over the last couple of decades, and it's been extremely successful for us. I mean, the games we played in Paris this last January were the two most watched NBA games in France ever. So we know that there are fans in these global markets. A quarter of our players come from outside the U.S., right? And some of our best players, Giannis, Nikola, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander was born in Canada. So growing our game globally has led to talent development in those markets, which has made our game better and stronger globally. And then the third prong of that strategy is just the digital one, thinking about how you can create viewership experiences with foreign language telecasts and other things like that enable fans in whatever part of the world they live in to consume our game in whatever format they want. And to us, given the changing nature of the consumer and the changing nature of consumption habits, especially of our game, we just need to be more cognizant of that than ever. And so that's center to our strategy, especially digitally.
So we've taken the approach where we're actually looking to copy both of these leagues to get more international games played overseas. We were relatively late to the game, certainly compared to the NFL and the NBA, with the slight but being that we probably have the largest percentage of our players that are non-Americans to begin with. So, we took a step back and we're like, well, first, we were getting a lot of people, certainly from, Latin American countries and South American countries and now Asia, participating in our games that we didn't need to bring the games to them. I think we realize that there's opportunities to continue to do that. So, we've started to dip our toe a little bit into the London market. We've been there now a couple of times. We've been to Japan a couple of times. We were out in Korea last year. I'm actually leaving to go to Tokyo next Tuesday to go see Ohtani in Japan. And, the reality is the Dodgers World Series games were watched like an NFL Super Bowl game here in Japan. And, the market loves Ohtani. The way I kind of equate it is he's kind of like the Taylor Swift of Japan. And, everywhere he goes, his movements are tracked, and he's a beyond cultural celebrity. So we then trying to figure out how we're going to be able to continue to spur that on and continue to grow that audience and continue to try and find new ways to, have fans participate with the game.
If I can add, Chris made an excellent point. There's participations at the core. And then you look at where they live in, how they consuming information. And that lends us into that proper integration of your media, your content partners. Netflix, Peacock, Amazon, all of those platforms allow us to reach that's necessary for the global footprint, so that when your game shows up in different languages and different kind of formats, those content or media partners allows the reach that we believe is necessary to be a true global sport.
Thank you. So who's going to be the first to start a team outside North America? I'm kidding. You don't have to answer. You don't have to answer it. No. Unless you want to, Mark. Break news.
Oh, no. I don't have anything to share there, but, we were the first to do it outside of the United States. We certainly introduced teams in Canada a while back, and, we've been encouraged by continuing to have a larger global footprint. It's obviously, I think, important for all of us. There's a lot of complications as you move into other markets and scheduling and taxing and lots of other things just with the player movement. I mean, just on a daily basis to get a player overseas and all the intricacies that goes with it, even with the Canadian-U.S. border, is a little monumental. So Troy's probably closest to this on the player side, but on the business side, it's certainly it's tough. So I don't know how quick it'll be, but again, we've always been a fan of it, and want to continue in some capacity.
Yeah, and the only thing I'd add to that is, we have a G League team in Mexico City, Capitanas. It's been extremely successful. Fan reaction's been terrific. We played games in Mexico City for a long time, and I know the reception there is always tremendous. So, we'll continue to look at all that stuff. But yeah, the competitive integrity issues from having regular season games on a regular basis in time zones that are 6-8 hours ahead of where the majority of our teams are is tough. But that doesn't mean we won't continue to look at events and special tentpole things in those markets, because we know, to your point, with all the fans wearing, jerseys from across the league, we know they are fans of the game, like in those places. And so to bring it to them locally, we think is just critical to the ongoing development of fans globally.
I don't think we're that far. Commissioner has alluded to it the last, say, 2 or 3 years. And as we grow the footprint, I think the closer you think about Canada, you think about Mexico, where the game is common. The American game of football is common in both places. Great fandom in both areas. And he's, I think, the membership base. And when I say membership, I'm speaking about the 32 club owners. So I think that appetite to continue to grow. When you look at where's the next 100 million fans going to come from, it's globally. It's global. And the more you're in front of, the more, as we would say, grassroots. When you have someone that you can identify with to say, this person's from our country, this person's from our community, I think we're a little bit closer than what people may be thinking.
But we all have a little bit of surgical ways that we're kind of doing it now. Like for baseball, we have the World Baseball Classic, which we're able to take games and play those internationally. So we have, versions of tournaments that we're participating in that context. It's not exactly the same as being there every day. These are a little bit more strategic, a little bit more every couple of years. And, I think we saw at the Olympics when we were all rooting for Steph Curry for the first time ever. I wish he was on the Knicks, but he's not. So I finally got to root for him. He was on my team. He was on Team USA, and man, did he light it up. And just watching that, the international flair and that excitement. Again, it's not there every day, but you got that one chance to kind of see that in the international space.
And the players enjoy it. When the players come back, it's a lifetime experience. And we feel like every NFL player, I remember my rookie year in Miami, it was 92. The Dolphins, we went to go play the Broncos. I think it might have been Germany, but it was just a great experience. They're weak. The players are there. They come back. Those that bring their families, I just think is a wonderful experience, a cultural experience for the athletes that have never left the country.
Nice. All right. Thank you. So continuing to sort of look forward a little bit, how have your leagues thought about and approached I think, Chris, you mentioned this earlier, the changing way that people consume sport and what you're doing or what you want to do to be able to continue to engage more fans?
Yeah, I mean, there's a couple aspects to it. So start with the remote viewing experience and the media content consumption experience. So 75% of our fans come from outside the U.S. if you use social media followers as a proxy. We have 2.5 billion social media followers. So we need to really think about how fans of different types consume our game. And so you'll see us, within our app environment have, a condensed game, a 10-minute highlight package, an all possessions way to consume the game. So we can do that. We'll continue looking at time shifting, when games actually tip off, so we can enable more viewing in those different markets. And, honestly, we know half of our fans roughly are under 35. And so if we look at how that audience is consuming, we know that our presence across third-party content platforms, social media platforms is critical. And so continuing to invest in really sharp, talented people from a content perspective that know how to package stories together. I mean, we heard a lot of discussion this morning around storytelling, and I think Chris LaPlaca brought it up. in the first conversation, like that's what fans are looking for, you know. And so everybody loves a highlight, but people love more learning who our players are. And so leaning into that is also something that we think about a lot. But then, and I'll cut this a little bit short, the other place we are always looking to innovate is in the live experience. And so, you know, only 1% of our fans will ever get to attend a game in person. How do we make that the most memorable, incredible experience possible? So, you know, we do a ton of different things within the building to make it a great show. If you go to a Bucks game or a Bulls game or any NBA game, you will see a tremendous show, and that is a very thoughtful process that people spend a lot of time on. But we're also looking to expand the aperture and be more inclusive. So the Milwaukee Bucks are here. They actually close caption, you know, the call of the game on scoreboard, so people who are, you know, who are hard of hearing can follow along. We have a company that we work with that's actually created a tactile way to experience the game in person, such that a blind person can actually follow the game by having a pad on their lap, and you know, it vibrates in time with how, you know, with where the possession is going and things like that. So blind people can actually enjoy an NBA game. So we will never stop innovating around the live experience to expand the amount and different types of fans who can come into our building and create amazing memories and hopefully keep coming back.
Yeah, the live experience is one that, I mean, what Chris had just referenced about just showing up, different places of storytelling. This is where you lean into your partners to assist you in those areas. But that live game, there's nothing like the live game experience. We experience that here in Madison. Those 6 home games, what is it, 6 or 7 home games? When that stadium is full, that game day experience, there is nothing like it. You can't duplicate it. There's only so much you can do when you're in your basement or at your buddy's house with the brats on the little grill. But there's nothing like walking down and going to Camp Randall and that live game experience that day. Those are lifetime memories. So we are constantly thinking about in Green Bay, in Titletown, what is that? What is that? How do the people show up from Friday to post game, and across all 32 of the individual cities? So just how creative that young fan base. Everyone's trying to tap into that 13 to 40-year-old. Where is he or she living? You know, what are they doing? How are they consuming information? Is it showing up on all of these different platforms, these digital platforms? Quick, easy, using data. And the next gen stats, how is that showing up to explain our game, to engage more people, to make it more creative? So you got to be creative. You get left behind.
Well, Troy, you just mentioned why partially I'm a little bit blind here, and I'll tie this back to the University of Wisconsin because, as you said, the game day experience is phenomenal, and we're no different. You know, to go to a baseball game, we have 81 of them. It's a lot, but it gives you the opportunity to go kind of when you want at your schedule, at your leisure, because again, we have so much of them over a 6-month period. But the University of Wisconsin, by perfect way of example, their number 1 revenue sport, football. Their number 2 is basketball, and baseball is no longer a program here, right? So I sit here and I think about how am I going to get everybody in this game engaged when you're not going to be able to go to a game here. Now, we have a feeder system that's a little bit different than the other sports. We have minor leagues. We have 2 teams that are in Wisconsin that I get to oversee the ticketing for those as well. So, you know, we have a path to get, you know, fans to other types of games, and we have a path to get players there. But again, you want to develop that live game experience. So like, what is the way we're going to be able to deliver that content when I know you can't go to a University of Wisconsin baseball game? So those are the things that we continue to scratch our heads and trying to find new ways to innovate. And, you know, so we think about, well, when you do go to a game, how are you going to make it like that in-game experience is going to be phenomenal. But who here remembers walking into a ballpark? Probably nobody, or stadium. You probably remember when it sucks when the ingress is so crowded and everybody's walking at the same time and you're standing outside for 45 minutes, especially when the weather's crummy. So we've spent a lot of time and effort in trying to, I would say perfect, but certainly amplify the get-in experience, right? And we kind of have created what we call go-ahead entry. It's a process where you can really walk from your car into the stadium without ever breaking stride. It's a facial recognition technology that you have to raise your hand and participate in. But when you start to combine that with a company called Evolve, which does our walk-through security, you literally can never pause your step. And you walk through that stadium, you know, and you walk in, you're like, did I just do that? And you're like, it almost is like this magical experience. So again, those are things that we're trying to to find, I think everyone touched on the ways that we're trying to get digital consumption and other things to go with it. But then we're trying to layer on that in-game experience that actually doesn't tie to the game itself. It's literally the experience of walking in or walking out. And how do we serve you that message when you're walking out properly to say, hey, team won, let's give you, an exciting message. Team lost, maybe we got to back off and change our messaging, to a little bit more appropriate, because nobody really cares when they're upset when their home team just lost that game. So, we continue to bounce around with those ideas.
Sorry, just to shamelessly pile on, but like I would be remiss and I'd probably get in trouble if I didn't mention Intuit Dome in LA. And if anybody's in LA, please check it out. It is phenomenal. We definitely took the facial recognition technology. It's called Game Face in LA. You could tie a credit card to it. You will not wait in a line in the building, not to go to the bathroom, not to get a drink, not to get a beer, nothing. You will walk right in. You will get whatever you want from whatever concession stand. You will go to your seat and you will watch the game. And the in-game experience is phenomenal. A brand new section called The Wall, 4,500 continuous seats to create a true home court advantage. And I say that because one of the cool things about, I think, working for the leagues is that we have the benefit of being exposed to and being pushed by some of the smartest people on the planet. And Steve Ballmer is obviously a very smart and intelligent man, and he had a vision for a building that he wanted to bring to life. And he found super talented people from a technology perspective to make it happen. And so I think as our owners continue to look, and our governors continue to look for ways to differentiate themselves and grow their businesses, they're going to keep pushing the boundaries from a technology perspective, and we're going to end up with better fan experiences as a result.
I would just say, and I'm showing my age here, it was literally you come to the stadium, you watch the football game, or you go to watch a basketball game, baseball game. Now it's a true event with sport and entertainment actually being integrated together. So now you don't see watch a game, at least a primetime game, Christmas game, or play without some kind of form of short concert. But this is what the communities. Arthur Blank is one, I think, down at Mercedes-Benz Stadium. He is, when you go to that stadium, you pull in, it is concert, it is movement, it is things going on for everybody from the 2-year-old to pop-pops, myself. And when you go in that stadium, it is from country western to rap to you name it. And it is just constant movement and entertainment. And I just think that enriches that game day experience. And then you have the technology today, as the men just spoke to. You're coming in there free parking, boom, boom, boom. And next thing you know, you're buying your hot dogs, your popcorn, and you're at a concert. And then you got a live game going on in between.
All right. Troy, I can't believe you'd mentioned Christmas Day right in front of Chris. All right.
Christmas, Black Friday. I'm like, game after game after game. Yes.
Thank you, gentlemen, for giving us a little bit of an insight into what the leagues have done, or doing, and are planning to do in the future. I know we're getting close to time, so I want to open up to questions. I think there was a gentleman back there who had his hand raised.
Yes.
Yep. So go
here,
ahead.
I'll stand up. So you talked a little bit about your global outreach, and this question might be a little bit more for Troy here. But in 2028, there's the Olympics in LA, and the NFL is doing a lot of outreach with Flag. And what kind of opportunity do you see to grow the game globally? We've seen the Olympics and these national tournaments grow other sports, such as the NBA with the Barcelona Olympics. We've seen soccer in the U.S. with the '94 World Cup. And I guess we've seen the World Baseball Classic grow the sport of baseball in these smaller countries and countries across the world. What kind of opportunity do you see that the NFL can take advantage of in 2028, getting this grassroots level growth for all these new countries that will be like getting their first taste of competitive, like mainstream, nationally televised, internationally televised football? Thank you.
Excellent question. So Flag is our entry point. So we have the LA 28 Olympics, as you just referenced. We're actually now in the process of hoping that we can get to Brisbane Bend 32. So we just don't want it to become a one and done. We're looking at having by 2027, 2028, 50 states sanction girls high school flag. We're at 14 today. You know, we're on track to become an emerging sport, a championship sport at the collegiate level. I believe personally that you have to give. I'm going to speak specifically to the young ladies to grow the sport globally. You got to give them something to. What's the aspirational? It's playing college ball. You know, because you know the small fraction will play pro ball, but if I know that someone is going to earn a scholarship, and now with NIL that I can play ball, but I need to play in high school, so that high school space now leads to, man, I can play in a championship, an emerging sport, championship sport at a collegiate level. We've been talking about the commissioner reference at the Super Bowl, pro leagues. So a flag pro league, both for women and men, here on the near horizon. And then you have the Olympics. But we just don't want to be a one and done. So we believe that flag football is the simplest, the easiest. As we would say, it's affordability, accessibility, and it's all inclusive. So flag football actually presents, it's affordable. There's no certain type of body shape that is required. It's really football for all. So we think that the LA 28 Olympics and flag football really gives us, I think right now we're in like 20 different countries. There's over 200 million, 22 million people playing flag football at that 6 to 17 age length. So it is our gateway to introducing the game of American football globally.
All right. Let's go up here.
I already got the mic back here. Sorry.
Oh,
Sorry, got a question for all three of you guys.
Oh, we'll walk around.
Question for all three of you guys. All of you touched on the spectrum of market size and global reach within your leagues. I was just wondering, what are some key differences in the strategies you see to establish small market stars with a small global reach versus marketing those large market stars with already a large global reach? Thank you.
Well, I'll just start with, I think we had a little under 100 players that were playing in the National Football League a year ago. Every week, a player is putting up his hand about, this is my country, that we didn't know about. And we really believe it starts with the storytelling of those that are from Ghana, from Nigeria, from China, from Asia. Those are the stories and the stars they become, whether they're superstars in the National Football League, they're superstars from their native land. And just us continue to storytell around those, activate around, they're doing camps, over 200 camps from guys, from doing camps out in their native countries. Those things, we benefit from that without doing much, but outside of drawing awareness to what these athletes are doing.
Yeah, I think for us, and I mentioned the quarter of our players being international too, and the democratization of talent across our markets kind of almost takes care of the small market dynamic for us to an extent, right? I mean, Giannis is a generational talent. The Bucks won a title in 21, right? That is not a large market. And that team continues to invest in its roster, and he's one of the biggest global superstars we have. So you look at the best team in the NBA right now, or second best team in the NBA in Oklahoma City, and an odds-on favorite to win the title. So small market teams are able to compete. And when we think about the global footprint, again, 75% of our fans are global. Like, that allows us, I think, the opportunity to think of ourselves more as global brands as opposed to small market or large market brands. Now, I guess the other thing I'd mention is that we've also really tried to create systems, whether that's revenue sharing or the new CBA, that rewards the types of roster construction and then equitable distribution of local revenues and national revenues or global revenues to enable those smaller markets to compete, where maybe their local media deal or their former local media deal wasn't as rich maybe as some of their peers. They're able to make that up in other ways. And I think that'll continue to be a focus for us.
Yeah, I don't have a whole lot more to add. I think these guys touched on it really well. I mean, the only slight difference with baseball is our stars are a little bit more regionalized for whatever reason, for good or bad. But we do have them at the local level. We haven't garnered some of the attention at the national level. Obviously we have certain players that continuously break through, but we haven't had it at the same scale that the other leagues have. We've also, looked in the mirror and said, all right, well, why is that? And the reality is we actually don't probably have as many former players working at the league office as we could or we should. So we're really starting to take some new thought into it. CC Sabathia, who former pitcher of the Yankees and the Brewers, right? We'll make that local. Has really started to spearhead a group where we're going to continue to try and make sure we have the proper player relations, so we're thinking about our own marketing tactics in a way that'll be most effective to continue to build their brands both locally and nationally.
I would also add, at the National Football League, we have what is called a global marketing program. In 2024, there were 25 teams. Chris had referenced that territories. So we have 25 teams that are participating in that global marketing, meaning they have certain markets in those global footprints that they can go and really be who they want to be and show up the way they want to, whether that's active players, former players that are ambassadors. And that program we've seen has been tremendous in allowing the clubs to own that territory, to build that fan base there, and also to grow participation in that particular area.
Yeah, and we do something similar. Our program, as you know, is a little different from yours, but yeah, teams can go internationally and market themselves to whatever fan base they want. So obviously the Bucks like to be active in Greece and do all that other sort of stuff, but any team can do that. And interestingly, the Orlando Magic, which is not a big market team necessarily, has tremendous success internationally because they're a great tourist market and they're really smart business operators. So they go to Brazil, they go to China, they go to Germany, they engage tourism and tour operators there to grow their brand in those markets. And so they can kind of take maybe a differential advantage in those places relative to their domestic market size, if that makes sense.
All right. Go ahead, Mitchell.
One quick last question I think we have time for. You talked a lot about technology improving the fan and the customer experience. How are your leagues individually using technology to improve the product and game on the field or court?
Yeah. We're not allowed to talk about the stuff that happens on the court. That's not team. No, listen, I think it is an area of competitive advantage for a lot of our teams. And so from a league perspective, I would say that, whether it's through our Launchpad initiatives to introduce vendors, training, technology, and other sorts of things to our teams, we've tried to provide them with an equitable playing field to start from. And the way they choose to, hire and resource against basketball and competitive technology to improve the capabilities of their players and their teams is really an individual governor decision. And they all, spend at different levels, as you would probably imagine. But then also from a league perspective, I think we're trying to invest in other types of technology that give them, more data, whether that's second spectrum data to measure how the game is actually flowing on the court, or Hawkeye data, to actually measure how the game is being played on the floor, and then provide that data equally to all 30 teams so they can make their own decisions. But I would say that, our teams are so competitive, and the way that they're investing in, practice and training facilities and other things like that is truly mind-blowing. And so to kind of see that is a cool part of our job, but not necessarily our place to take away a competitive advantage that they might get from, proprietary training technologies and things like that.
Yeah, for us, that's a very delicate topic on the football side. Much, much further advanced from a technology and innovation side for customer experience and things that they're doing as it pertains to some vendors. When you go to the football side, we're reminded every day the coach doesn't want another coach to have an event, allow technology to advance him on game day. Like when I say delicate conversation, that's why it's delicate when I say the art of art and science, because the coaches believe that coaching is an art and not allow, which we have technologies way out front on the football side. We just haven't introduced a lot of it due to the fact that coaches want to make sure that their opponents are preparing during the week and not be aided on game day to make a decision or make it a game time adjustment when they want them to do it on a whiteboard with a Sharpie or a marker, and not allow technology to advance. Like college football, high school football has video on the sideline. So it's been 1 decade. It's been literally 10 years that there's been a proposal, a resolution to have video on the sideline. So when you look at the coaches and the players, that's a tablet. Those are still shots. College football and high school football has video. It's not a still shot, it's a video. And just trying to get over the hump with the current coach is like, they need to make that decision in between the timeout, in between halftime, in between the TV break. Do not allow technology to aid the coach, to help the coach out on game day. So, but it's all there.
Well, I'll try to answer this quickly because I think we're running short in time, and I think baseball invented technology and the analytics of it. Using Moneyball and different concepts like that. Having teams, we're getting advantages on each other just by being smarter and being thoughtful. And again, like that's something to think about here. You had if you ever watched the movie Moneyball, it also tells the story of the book. You basically had a kid who thought about baseball differently and like how he can take strategic advantages that were available to everybody, but he just thought of them differently. And then, from there we kind of had a snowball effect in terms of technology, but we make all of the analytics and things like that available to our players and to our teams. And then, all right, well, we thought about, how do we do more fun stuff off it, make the viewing experience better. We use the game clock experience. We use things like that all started to things with the technology that we have to what we may lean into, where you may have seen in spring training, we have automatic balls and strikes. We now have a challenge system. I have no idea if that's going to come at the major league level, but I will say I was at spring training last week and I saw a couple of challenges, and it is awesome for fan entertainment and interact because everybody looks at the big board and says, oh, is that a strike? And then you see Alex Braum, who's the third baseman of the Phillies, when his team got it right, he's pumping his fist in the air. And you're like, that's awesome. So again, it all started with kind of the technology that we were building out just for understanding our own player to begin with. Then you start to think, and again, you guys should all be doing this too. All right, what do you do with that? And how do you make something more of it? So, yeah.
Now, I would end with this. We are seeing, I know we're in, you all feel it as fans, replay and replay assist, this Hawkeye technology. It allows us to efficiently, quickly, accurately assist in something that's clear and obvious. And you feel that game day, hey, replay assist, hey, it was catch, no catch. Ball was out of bounds. And people say, and I'll close with this, man, don't you have technology to spot that ball? No. It doesn't. And when I say no, because there's a human element that will always exist when the official blows the whistle to stop forward progress. So you just can't send cameras and angles to say, nope, there's a human element that will always exist. The whistle being blown, and where did forward progress actually end, stop? So, but you feel it in our replay assist. That technology allows us to be efficient and accurate to keep the game moving.
All right. How lucky are we that we got to spend almost an hour with some of the greatest minds in sports here? Mark Plutzer, the NBA, Chris Petersen, or MLB, Chris Petersen, NBA, Troy Vincent, the NFL. Thank you.
And thank you all.
Oops. For the sake of time, we're going to get kicked off right away with the next panel. We've got a really, really packed schedule today, this afternoon. So, I am absolutely thrilled to have our next panel join us today. We're focusing on private equity, institutional investment, and the role of athletes within sports and considering sports as an asset class. I know a lot of you who probably studied down the street at Granger Hall have opened up the Wall Street Journal in the last 6 or so months and have seen an article about sports investment in private equity or an athlete doing a deal with an institutional investor. And as we see valuations continue to rise for sports franchises, as we see a value prerogative continue to enter our dialogue surrounding what athletes can do for businesses, it's very important to consider what the future of the sports industry looks like with institutional investors and private capital involved. So, with that being said, we are absolutely thrilled to have our moderator, Todd Richman of Morgan Stanley Global Sports and Entertainment, and our title sponsor, Morgan Stanley, for this panel, as well as Aaron Ryan of Belden Avenue Advisors, Kristin Bernert of Swish Partners, Matt Siegel of Patrick Company, and Scott Young of UBS to discuss the future of sports, finance, and sports as an asset class. Thank you very much. Please give them a warm welcome.
Hear me? Yes. All right. Well, good afternoon, everybody. Thanks for being here today. We really appreciate you, and I will tell you that for all of us seniors, we have all been talking about how impressed we are with the caliber of students that are here today. So congratulations on being here and for all you're doing to advance your careers. So as our host said, my name is Todd Richman. I'm a Morgan Stanley financial advisor, managing director in private wealth management. I'm also a global sports and entertainment director, and we are very proud to be one of the co-sponsors of the event. My business partner, Scott Zemmickson, is here as well. Scott is the proud father of Jackson. And a round of applause for the students that put this amazing presentation together. So before I start asking questions and we open it up to the audience, I would love it if, even though they did a quick intro of you, maybe do a 1 or 2 minute synopsis of who you are and what you do, and then we'll get kind of right into it. So Aaron.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. My name's Aaron Ryan. I started my own business called Belden Avenue Advisors just recently. Strategic advice in the sports and entertainment space, really for teams, leagues, properties, and brands. I also do some executive coaching for transitioning athletes and emerging leaders in our industry. Prior to starting this business, I worked at a place called at a RIA called North Rock Advisors. I ran the sports and entertainment practice, really surrounding a multifamily office structure for athletes and entertainers. And prior to that, I worked at Overtime Elite. I was the first president and commissioner of that league, which was pre-NIL. And that's really where my sort of emerging why has come, which is this idea of empowering the next generation athletes and leaders. And the landscape around them has changed quite a bit. And so I'm excited about this conversation.
Fantastic. Kristin.
Thank
KB.
you. Yeah, KB. My friends call me KB. You're already a friend. Kristin Bernert. I'm with Swish Partners, which is an investment fund focused on women's sports, which we'll talk a little bit about today. I most recently was president of the Columbus Crew. My claim to fame is I've worked in every sports league in the United States, team sports, except for the NFL. So Troy, I'm looking for a job to complete the play. But so have been at Madison Square Garden, the Knicks and the Rangers, WNBA teams, ran the LA Sparks, the Detroit Shock, which may be coming back, apparently, is what we're hearing. NWSL, I'm a part owner of Gotham FC, and I'm now, again, like really focused on women's sports. We talk about our why, and just like globally, when we look at the role that sports plays, big believer that the more wealth we put into women's pockets, the better our world will be. And so with a private equity fund coming in focused on women's sports, ultimately it's about the athletes benefiting and raising the salaries and raising the purses and having more wealth for women so that guys like Todd can take them on as clients at Morgan Stanley and grow that wealth. So thank you for having me.
Thanks, KB. Nat.
I'm Matt Siegel. There we go. One of the founding partners at Patrick Co. We help professional athletes navigate the business and investing world. A big part of what we do is help athletes get access to private equity investments, a lot of later stage companies, a lot of consumer-facing companies because they like having the athletes on board as investors. So we're investors in companies like Bombas, the sock company, Kodiak Cakes, Cholula Hot Sauce was one of our big deals. And we'll put anywhere from 50 to 100 athletes into each investment and then work with the company to see how our athletes can add value to the investment.
Matt, I'm wearing Bombas.
Keep buying them.
It's great sock. Just great
I have
sock.
Bomba slippers, just so you know. Not on, not on. I'm wearing sneakers, I was told by Jax. Scott, introduce yourself, and then maybe for those, since you're a Wisco guy, and there are Wisco people here, maybe for beer trivia, you talk just quickly, because they've been talking about branding. Talk a little bit about that branding conversation we were just having.
Sure. Thanks, Todd. It's great to be here. Thank you very much for having me. And sure, great to see all of you here. You're here because you have a purpose, and you're taking time out of your valuable day to learn. We're all here to learn and share. So congrats to you for coming and making the time to be here. My name is Scott Young. I work with UBS Financial Services in Denver, Colorado. I am also a financial advisor, and part of our practice is around sports and entertainment. And primarily, our focus is on working with executives and coaches in the league. We have a handful of players, but we have coaches, executives, and players on about half of the teams in the NFL. Please pardon me, my expertise lies in football and not in other sports properties, but
can you get KB a job in the NFL?
Look for it.
The man you need to talk to is right out there. And actually, Troy Vincent's right out there. I want to give a shout out to him. He and I were teammates here. I walked on to the football team under Barry Alvarez in 1991. He was a teammate of mine, and I remember one of the first meetings I had with that guy. He said, I was a walk-on, so I had a long road to hoe and a big boulder to push up the mountain. But Troy Vincent said, you keep working like you're working, and you're going to play here. So I am permanently grateful and indebted to that guy for encouraging me. And how that relates to every person sitting in this audience, you need to find mentors, good people to surround yourself with that are going to pour into you. And once you do that, once you find the people that believe in you, they're going to pull you right up the ladder. So he was one of those guys. So wanted to share a quick branding story because we've talked a lot about marketing and branding here today. And that's obviously a very important part of the ecosystem of sports, right? So when Barry Alvarez got here in 1990, I'm sure many of you know Barry Alvarez was the former head football coach and became the athletic director here. He came in here and wanted to change the image of the athletic department in sports. And what he did was there was a block W on the side of the football helmets and all the uniforms that Wisconsin used to wear. I don't know if anybody remembers the old block W. It was a little bit outdated, and Coach Alvarez came in here with a vision and a mission to upgrade and update the branding around the university, the branding around the athletic department, the football team. So the Motion W was born in about 1991. He changed that to be in alignment with the mantra for the state. The mantra for the state of Wisconsin is forward. And I think the mantra for the university is forever forward. So he wanted to make this very much in alignment with Wisconsin. So you saw that Motion W, and now when you see Wisconsin athletics, you see that Motion W. And why this is really important, okay, for everybody who wants to get into sports is having that vision. Coach Alvarez had a very distinct vision of what football at Wisconsin looks like. So what he did was he came in here and built that team in that vision, and now you have all the sports around Wisconsin are very much hardworking, not flashy, just very consistent, disciplined. That's what Wisconsin represents, and that started with Barry Alvarez. So thank you for letting me share that story.
I mean, forget about working in football. I want to go out and play football now. Like, let's go.
Well, listen, what Scott's saying about the branding, then we're going to go right into the private equity conversation. If you heard so many of the people that have been on stage already, it's about creating your own brand, creating your own story. So as you are all here today, learning and listening and networking, on your social media, in your personal life, create your own brand, create your own story, and that will really resonate when you all go out into the workforce. So let me start. We had some pre-calls. They were definitely by far the most fun pre-calls of any of the panels. Sorry, and of any of the panelists that are here. But Aaron, let's talk about private equity for a second. Private equity and institutional investors, people are investing in teams, as a viable opportunity. How do they look at those opportunities?
Well, it's changed quite a bit. If you think about pro sports, and I'll reference the NBA most because I know it the closest, is these were family businesses for a long time. I mean, we have some owners from the past that literally created their wealth by way of owning a team, and that's dramatically changed. And what's happened in the industry is there's just sort of an institutional recognition of a mature industry now. There's two things going on at minimum, which is scarcity. I mean, there's 160 franchises in North America. If you take that concept into other types of franchises, let's just take restaurants for a second. 360,000 of those exist in North America. And so when you think about it, feels big, but it's actually relatively small. And so there's only so many of these Fabergé eggs, as you will, in the world. And so that recognition of not only the scarcity, but also the institutional stability. What we fail to realize in the United States is that our players get paid on time. Our games happen when they're supposed to happen, but there are parts of the world where that does not happen. Those are not guarantees, as crazy as that sounds. And so the stability of the industry in this country is another thing. The other thing is it's fairly inelastic. If you look over the last 16 years with labor stoppages, a pandemic, a couple of economic downturns, in most leagues you see asset appreciation. And so the industry is recognizing that. And the last thing I'll say is owners and investors are looking at it as a mixed use opportunity more so today than ever, which is effectively a real estate play with an anchor tenant called a live sporting event. And so that's what I think they're looking at, and that's why it's attractive right now.
Fantastic. My business partner and I recently met with Mark Lassery, and we were talking all about investing in private equity and all of these really interesting opportunities, from bullfighting to certain types of car racing and other opportunities. One of the things that he talked about, of course, and we've been talking about, we heard it in another panel, is women's sports. And KB, as you were saying, with the WNBA that you've been involved in, although I wouldn't mind talking about the Columbus Crew Major League Soccer, but we could talk about that another time. And NWSL. I mean, where do you see the potential growth and opportunities and some of the future in terms of women's sports?
One thing that we all know is history repeats itself, right? Like in just about anything that any business, government, whatever, history repeats itself. Can I make this participatory? Can I ask the classic question?
That one over there is sleeping, so definitely call on him.
Okay.
Or not just joking. I'm joking.
Devin Jackson, do we have any prizes? Do you have any prizes? Okay, maybe not.
Yeah, no. I just took a couple of the beer openers from the minor league baseball team, so as long as you're over 21, we can get them for you.
Okay. Does anybody know when the NBA was formed? Over here. I don't know it for a fact, but I think you're close. I make up facts all the time, by the way.
So you're saying you don't know?
I do know.
46?
That's right.
All right.
Okay. Very close. So 1946. Fast forward. Does anybody know when the WNBA was formed? Go ahead. 94, close. 96. So think about that time gap, okay? And I happened to work with some former NBA players as coaches. A guy by the name of Bill Lambier and another guy, Isaiah Thomas. He didn't coach, but he was an executive. They were both part of the bad boys back at the Pistons. And they used to say to me all the time, with the style of play that was happening in the WNBA, this is circa 2002, 2006, 2010, that whole time period. They would say, KB, this is like 1980s NBA basketball. And I'm like, wow, it is. It was a lot of physical play, very different styles of play throughout the league. And so I started to go deeper in that. I'm like, and you think about the business. It's kind of like the business of the WNBA was probably in the 1980s at the time. And so just thinking about that as an investor, you're like, oh, right? So the maturity of the game, maturity of the business is sure to happen. And what you're seeing right now is it's happening. The game is accelerated at such a rapid pace. It's been able to engage fans in a different way. We saw it. I could see it coming before that because I'm just a nerd. So Caitlin Clark hits. But what people didn't see, where people really started talking about the WNBA was back in 2020 in the Wubble when people didn't really have anything else to watch from live sports, and people were able to really engage with the WNBA and really experience it for the first time, and not just the great game, but the great personalities, right? So it was like, oh man, this starts to happen. and then the lighter fluid that happened with Kate and Clark, it was ready to go. So you go back and you say, okay, the game is there, the business is going to follow. Now, are the investable assets the same as exist in men's sports right now? No, they're very, very mature. So go back 50 years. This is going to be more venture and more growth stage, which is what we are. But you can see down the line, what's happening. Aaron talked about scarcity. WNBA right now, they went to the 15th expansion team. Up for auction right now is the 16th. We're in the bid in Nashville. Cheer for us. We'd love to win it. But it's the price is going up rapidly because there's one more team you can go get. So people get irrational with their investment at that point. But the scarcity factor, where you can see the WNBA headed and women's sports headed, it's very clear now. So we're sitting here going, okay, how do we evaluate properties? What are the best bets to make? What are the right investments to make by our investors, and being really clinical about how we go about it? But the ecosystem is simply exploding right now. It's an exciting place to be, and we'll see.
Yeah. In MLS, Major League Soccer, I know the first team, the LAFC, had an valuation of over $1 billion.
Yeah.
You're bidding now, or you're looking to bid on a Nashville team. What has been the rise in terms of that license or that purchase price for a WNBA team? If you're allowed to even say,
yeah,
I mean,
it's been public. They're saying north of 200 million, and so that's real. This is going from a transaction. I think the last transaction was the Las Vegas Aces, and went for a few $1 million. And this is
that's growth.
2021.
Yeah.
So the growth has been just very, very fast.
That's fantastic. That's amazing. Matt, you do some really interesting things. A lot of things that I'm sure a lot of the young adults here would love to hear more about. You work with a lot of professional athletes in terms of their own personal investments. Right? You work with some special purpose vehicles, maybe talk a little bit about what the SPVs are. And then as you're talking about what you're doing with your clientele, maybe there's a particular deal or relationship that's public, right? You can't talk about the things that are not, but that might really, catch the eyes of everybody that's out in the audience.
Yeah, so we'll basically invest in a company where we'll put together 50 to 100 athletes into an SPV. So we're just essentially writing one check. And then, every brand is a little different. So each brand will now have this large athlete group, and they are owners in the brand and want to help move the needle for the brand. But we'll find a deeper subset of, 4 or 5 athletes who are really passionate and really into that specific company. So Bazooka Candy is one of our investments. I don't know if you guys are aware, but DK Metcalf, all he eats is candy. Literally has coffee in the morning, candy all day, and then one meal. I don't know how he looks that way, but it's working. But so for him, whatever works. But so he actually, interesting, as soon as the season ended, flew into New York. He was so passionate about candy that he made a PowerPoint presentation to present to Bazooka Candy's CEO. And we went into the office, into a conference room, and he had all these different ideas and marketing initiatives, and even talking about gummy consistency, and just so passionate about it. And so they obviously loved it and were obsessed with it, and we started actually implementing some of his ideas. So he's going to have a gummy line coming out. I don't know if you guys saw it, went pretty viral, but he had a chain made out of Bazooka Candy, but with diamond encrusted, and walked into the stadium wearing it. And so he's helping his investment. He's having fun, and it'll help get a bigger return, hopefully, with all the work that he's doing. We're investors in a moonshine whiskey company called Old Smoky out of Nashville, and had a lot of athletes in that one. Current NFL players. It's a little gray area about them promoting liquor, so we had to work with a retired player. So Jason Kelsey just retired. He obviously looks like he drinks moonshine. So he fits
This is off the record, by the way, just so you know.
I'll say it to his face. That's fine. But so we flew down to Nashville, and he filmed a TV commercial. And they've never spent any money on marketing, but now these players involved as owners, it's a different relationship, and they feel more of an attachment to the brand. And if some brand just called his agent and said, I want Jason Kelsey to do a commercial, it's probably 7 figures at this point. But because he has this attachment to the brand, he wants to help his investment. The same time, behind the scenes, Dak Prescott signed a bunch of footballs for liquor distributors. That might be more impactful than the commercial. But so our job is to work with the portfolio company that we're investing in and figure out where our athletes can add value. Is that marketing? Is that commercials? It's social media. Some of our companies, it's fully behind the scenes. We invested in Orgain, which is a protein powder company, and we created a athlete advisory council, almost like a mini board seat. So we had 5 or 6 athletes who would get on quarterly calls with C-level executives and learn about the business, but also give their input as behind the scenes and as a consumer. So we call that athlete activation. So once we invest in a company, we'll work with them and figure out where our athletes can slot in to help move the needle.
Wow, that's awesome. That's awesome. Scott, so you and I do the same thing, right? We're financial advisors, wealth advisors for people. We've heard a little bit about private equity. We've heard a little bit about private investments. What are, from your point of view, what are some of the key components of a successful investment plan for an athlete, right? We talked about private equity, we talked about institutional investing, or what about just basic asset allocation, stocks, bonds, real estate alternatives?
Sure, thanks, Todd. And I might mention that Matt and I do work together. It was really neat that saw that Matt was going to be on this panel, and I reached out to him, and we share a handful of clients, and Matt and his group do a terrific job. So really enjoy that. And I think one of the key terms that we're talking about here is brand activation and partnership with like-minded brand ambassadors and the athletes. So I think Matt and his group do a terrific job of finding those athletes that want to affiliate with those brands and market those brands.
Yeah, see, it's even we're networked. See, you guys think it's just about you networking. Even you never stop networking, right? These are 2 guys that work together, and we're continuing to build our brand, build our network, and build our businesses. So I'm so glad that you brought that up. Thanks, Scott.
Yeah, thanks, Todd. So if I can start like at 10,000 feet here, I think everybody here, from everything we've heard today, it's about learning the ecosystem of sports. Where do you fit in the ecosystem of sports? And we can break down so many different verticals within the ecosystem of sports, right? So we're just one small vertical, the wealth management piece. But how this relates to what we do is actually investing for athletes and coaches and executives is a very small part of what we do. We actually view ourselves as business managers, because what we want to do is we want to empower our athletes, our coaches and executives to be great husbands, fathers, and coaches and players that be the best they can be. And we want to take the business affairs off of their plate. We want to let them be as involved as they want to be and align with the things that they want to align. But by and large, when you're working in the space with busy people, you want to present yourselves as a professional, let them engage when they want to engage, and then you can do the work behind the curtain to make sure that they can be the best they can be at their respective discipline. Does that make sense? That's what we're trying to do here as wealth managers. So if I were to break it down very simply in what we do with athletes and coaches and whatnot, it's really 3 phases of their careers for athletes especially. It's like the early years, the rookie years, they just have to survive. Especially in the National Football League, if you sign a contract as a rookie in the National Football League, it's a 4-year deal with an option to get extended by your 3rd year. So if you perform after year 3, you're going to get an extension, and that's when the real money comes in. So really, when an athlete comes on board, they're typically a young person, 22 or 23 years old. We just need to educate them on building a basic budget, staying very basic in what they're doing, and then just, again, keeping them in the game and focused to get to that second contract. And now we get to that second contract, and most of these leagues are the same way. You work for 2 or 3 or 4 years, and now real money is involved. Unless you're obviously a high round draft pick, a 1st or 2nd round draft pick. So then the more advanced planning comes in. But I think if you're going to work with if athletes or with coaches, it's about focusing on the big picture, and let them perform in whatever venue that they're in, and be the person behind the curtain to support them. And finally, when we're talking about retirement years, because specifically as it relates to athletes in football, the average NFL career is what? Who knows? Yes, sir. Exactly. 3.5 years. So athletes earn their money in reverse of how the rest of the population earns their money. Most of the population, you earn your money throughout your career, and you're making the most money toward the end of your career. But obviously, athletes come in, they make a lot of money up front, and then in some cases, they need to live on that pool of money for the rest of their lives. So we have to think about this in reverse and then create a legacy asset pool for them to give back to charity, to build their brands, and obviously to be able to earn income from their asset base that they've earned during their playing years for the rest of their lives. So it's a very tricky space to serve. And again, we try to incorporate all elements and all aspects, all phases of their lives early on. So thanks, Todd.
Fantastic. So I have a lot more questions to ask, but this is a student event. So I'm going to open it up really quickly to students, and then maybe I'll interject with some basic questions on top of it. So, yes. Here. This is also my job.
Thank you. You guys are talking about the private equity and like being a financial advisor for these athletes. How has NIL changed that landscape? And do you think it's on the responsibility of the school to provide that financial advisement, or is it companies coming in and finding those athletes?
You can take that, Todd.
Yeah, I mean, listen, I'll be really quick. The NIL is a game changer. No pun intended, actually, on that. But listen, I think it's a responsibility for all. I mean, at Morgan Stanley, we have a global sports and entertainment division. We will go to colleges and we will talk to the players about NIL and what it means to them. So I think it's some ways it's the responsibility for the universities. There's always a catch-22. I mean, you could talk more about this as well. I mean, in the professional sports, they don't necessarily love it when private companies come in because they don't necessarily want that fiduciary responsibility that they are doing that. So, listen, I always tell people, whether you're from the inner city of Camden to the cornfields of Nebraska, it's really, important to teach these young people what's going on because honestly, they don't know much about investing. So I personally think it's somewhat of the responsibility of the university to be able to bring in outside people to talk about financial education. You all should learn about financial education as well. And that the only way I think they're going to do this by bringing professionals like myself, like Scott. Aaron used to do this when he worked with North Rock at RA. We're registered investment advisor as well. So I don't know if you guys have some more comments on that.
I'll say something slightly provocative, which is when I got to Overtime Elite, part of my challenge to anybody who would listen is that this notion of a rookie transition program, which exists in all the leagues, which is when you get to become a pro, they start to talk to you about the complexities of your life. And I've always said that was too late. The reality of this should start a lot before that. A lot of bad habits have already been formed by the time you get there. And so now I'm going to extend that same concept to now the fact that there's NIL in college, that starting that process and that education in college is too late. And so the idea around building out robust financial education and life skill components to the broader education landscape is critical because the economy is actually flowing downstream. And so we have 16 to 19-year-olds making hard decisions, becoming taxpayers. All of these things are happening at an earlier stage. And so what I liked about the advantage of being at Overtime Elite pre-NIL is, yes, these young men were making a lot of money, but I'd rather see them skin their knee on $200,000 than on $200 million. And so if we could get some bad habits out of the way and have some really hard conversations, then I thought we could save their lives and save really their ability to create generational wealth. And so I just think it needs to continue to start earlier.
And all I would add is you had a great question, and you said, what responsibility does the university have to educate the student athletes? In my very humble opinion, this is the most wonderful teaching moment there is for student athletes to be taught how to be financially sound, how to be financially educated, and yet it's a great responsibility, and especially a school like the University of Wisconsin, which we all here believe that we do things the right way. Let's lead with education. Let's lead with helping these players succeed both on the field, in the classroom, and also with their financial matters, right? This is such an important teaching moment, and we're going to get it right. Our administration, the athletic department, in partnering with the university, we're going to get it right. A lot of schools need to focus on this, again, in my humble opinion, to create a great framework to educate these kids, because the dollars are real. The dollars are real. We actually have some kids that haven't even played a snap of college football before, and they're getting paid $1 million just to transfer, and they haven't even played yet. And this could be actually generational, or at least lifetime wealth for them if they handle that $1 million the right way. So this is a great teachable moment. We need to be very intentional about the infrastructure we build to educate the kids.
Yes.
We hear a lot about private equity investment in the professional sports leagues, but some firms have started exploring college athletic programs as well. I was curious what you guys see as the future there and where private equity might fit in that model, where we're still kind of dabbling between the amateur and the professional model in college sports, sort of alongside NIL.
I'll take a swing at it from a women's standpoint. Colleges, universities, the purpose is education. And so private equity coming in, I think it's really complicated. I really do. I think it's really complicated. I think that what college athletics is going through right now is extremely complicated. I think it's going to take a little bit longer for things to settle across the board to really understand where the opportunities are and where the vision's going to go and where the companies are going to go. So from a women's standpoint, I'm really educating myself and taking a step back and trying to understand exactly how this is going to impact women. And I'd also add to that, what will happen to men's sports outside of, football and basketball. And so, I'm a big believer in sport. I'm a big believer in it being extremely resilient. I think there's going to be a lot more turbulence, meaning not necessarily in a bad way. It's going to take a while for things to settle down before we really understand what's investable and what is not and where you should be placing your money.
Yeah, the ground below us is going to move for a while here. And so I think it's an area, whether we thought the collectives would be king or revenue sharing would dominate, we're still seeing that sorted out. It's going to take a while. I do think because of the pressures on schools to compete, especially in this sort of volatile period, there is a place for private for private credit. And I know that there are entities out here looking to try to help sort of basically backstop conferences and universities as they go through this period of time.
Yeah, and I wouldn't mind building on it. Just as we heard before about private equity going into professional teams, one of the things we heard about before, I think from last night, I think Mitch was talking about this, about the fact that the university is, losing $20+ million because of the NIL and the sponsorships, that they have to think of other creative ways to bring money into the university, right? So they're doing the Coldplay concert this summer, which my older son who graduated Wisconsin is going to come back and spend money. My senior, who's a senior here at Wisconsin, is going to be coming back. I think my wife, who's here, just told me that we're coming back for some reason because we can't come back for any other reason. But so you have to look at it from that perspective, that a lot of these schools now have to figure out ways to supplement some of this money that's lost. So this aspect of private equity, private credit, whatever it might be, to come in is very enticing. And as you were talking about financial education, it's really important that not only is there financial education for the students, but also for the administration, because all of a sudden money is playing a much bigger role. And what is the purpose of a university? One of the things also in terms of private equity are athletes that are going into investing in sports. So maybe Matt, I know you've been involved, I think, with some of those opportunities. Maybe you could talk a little bit about that.
With NIL? Yeah, I mean, now that these athletes are getting money so much earlier, I think they're also like way ahead of the game in terms of they were able to see the veteran players get into business and investing. I mean, our last few deals, we've had a lot of young NIL female athletes, Livy Dunn, Paige Beckers, Cameron Brink, and it's great that they're writing checks, but they also really want to just be seen as entrepreneurs and just understand what it is to fill out subscription docs and wire money and learn about the behind the scenes of the business. And so I know it's got to be crazy just as a young kid getting all this money, but having the right team around you, the right agent, the right wealth advisor, business manager, groups like us, and it's cool to see. I think even if they're not writing huge checks, it's really just the education side of it.
Yeah, I had a client of mine that set up an SPV, and they were investing in Leeds United, which is one of the soccer teams in England. One of your clients, I think, was involved in Tier 1 or...
Yeah, so we helped J.J. Watt, Wisco alum, buy a piece.
Anybody know who J.J. Watt is? Just so that was a joke. You didn't need to raise your hand.
Helped him buy a piece of Burnley, the soccer team. He was looking in the soccer space for a while. His wife's a professional soccer player, and the teams over here, the valuations were already pretty crazy for him to get in, and so he was going to write a material check for him. But for what we did with JJ was we helped him raise some money behind him, and he kind of formed this mini ownership group, and we put a bunch of other strategic investors with him. So now he's the head of this ownership group, takes a meaningful stake in Burnley, and he'll make money on the investment, but it's also he can now go replicate this with this ownership group and do other teams. And Wrexham kind of set the model with how they were doing it, but we're going to see a lot more of that, especially with everybody wants to be in team ownership, but the valuations are just crazy here. So for these guys to write checks, you're going to see them going overseas a lot more.
Great.
We got time for one more here.
One more? It's only 2:38. What are you laughing at? I'm joking. No, I'm joking.
So in talking about NIL, and obviously this money is getting put into these athletes at a lot earlier age, and you guys have been talking about the fact that it's an unprecedented amount of money at that age, and you're in private equity and in investing, you're investing your money into these athletes at a younger age. What part of it, if at all, is kind of going across the athletes and making sure you're putting your money in the right place, and these people are these athletes are people that you want to be invested in and you want to be working in? Like, what level of that is evaluation, and what level of that is kind of doing your due diligence and trying to talk to these athletes and making sure that you're putting your money in the right place?
Sure. Well, it's a really good question, and it's a tough one because NIL money can be sourced in a couple of different ways. Number one, obviously, the varsity collective is the University of Wisconsin's athletic department collective here, right? So student athletes can access the collective, and that is kind of a fund that all student athletes across the board can invest in. Now,
I was going to say, maybe just say a little bit what a collective is.
Sure. A collective is, and I'm not versed in the legalese of a collective, but by and large, a collective is a way for university donors that want to support student athletes that can invest in a big commingled vehicle with a tax advantage that the university can use at its discretion to distribute to student athletes in all the different sports, right? So it's the main vehicle on most universities that outside donors and alumni can donate to that will support the athletic department and student athletes, okay? So to answer your question, that's one way for student athletes, and that is a big pool. The donor really doesn't have any control, right? That could go for a lot of different things. So there's an argument there that some people don't want to contribute significant dollars there because they don't really have direct kind of control over that, right? Another way you can do this, if you're a business owner, if you own a car dealership down the street, you can choose to for Braden Allen, who's a great running back here, you can affiliate with Braden Allen. You can have him do marketing and branding and be an ambassador for your brand. You can pay him directly. That's another way for NIL money to be sourced. And then there's also a lot of ways for people for student athletes to use social media to get very little stipends just by doing ongoing posts and whatnot. There's all different types of ways, right, that student athletes can access NIL money. So I'm trying to answer your question, but it's all across the map how this NIL money gets distributed and really where it's sourced from.
Yeah, I'll just add to it. We're going to go through a transition where even traditional boosters in high school, it was always a heart over head game. You're always giving to something because you cared about it and you had an affinity. And so as the dollars get bigger, this transition from heart to head is going to come into play, and you're going to start talking about ROI versus just feeling great that you get to be a part of the red and white club or whatever it is. And so it is going to go through a transition where this used to just be about supporting your alma mater, and now it's going to be about return on that investment, especially because of the dollars being so much more significant.
So are we done? That's it. All right. Well, listen, we're not getting off the stage yet. No, I'm joking. But let me just say thank you, Aaron, KB, Matt, and Scott. This was a great panel. You guys are amazing.
And I just want to give a special shout out here to Jackson and Devin. You guys, but this is an absolutely fantastic event again, guys. for two guys, we had several conversations, and for you to take the initiative, how well organized this is, for all the students to come, the communication, to have great panelists and experts in their respective fields. Awesome. So great job, guys.
And great job also to all those that are working with those two guys, from the communications, the PR, the people working the front desk and everything. Congrats. Great job.
All right. Thank you once again. Another round of applause to the wonderful panelists that we had for this panel. And thank you to Morgan Stanley for setting this up for us. Really appreciate it. We're going to transition now into a break from now until 3:10 p.m. So during this time, feel free to stretch your legs. Definitely feel free to talk to some of the panelists, some of the people that we have here. Go check out the Mueller Sports Recovery Center and talk with our partners. And we will be back here for our NIL panel, future of NIL and college athletics, in about 30 minutes.